This is Sean. Thanks for joining me. I'll be your host for the next hour or so. This is a subject that's been on my mind a lot lately. I've said that I was going to talk about it, and so this is sort of a cliff notes because there's a lot of different rabbit holes to chase down. But I'm talking about what's going on with global warming, what's going on with the economy, what's going on with humanity, what are we getting into, and I'm looking at it from a spiritual, metaphysical, completely whack job, woo woo, who knows what, but it's fun, it's entertainment, and I hope you enjoy it. I hope it gets you to think in new and interesting ways, because that is my intent. So I'll be back in a minute, and love you much. Talk to you soon. Bye. Years ago, I heard a story, and I can't find this anywhere. So if you guys know about this, definitely let me know. But there was some science that came out that talked about when a woman goes into labor, what's actually happening there. And the idea was that when the baby is inside her, and this works for not just humans, but like any entity that gives, birth to something else. That when the infant isn't, but we'll just talk about humans because, we can relate to humans and mammals, I guess. But there comes a point where the child inside the woman is growing so rapidly that the woman's body can't sustain it anymore. And so when a woman goes into labor, the hormones that are released and the chemical process that takes place is actually a way of her body, ejecting the child. Because if the child was allowed to stay within the mother any longer, then it would just consume all of her resources. That's why it's so dangerous for a baby to stay inside a woman for too long, because it'll get too big and, it can rupture her system, or, it's consuming more calories than she can consume. She just becomes ravenously hungry because this thing is just growing so much that her body has to do something in order to survive. And so it has to get this baby out of it. And it's the same in, horses and dogs and cats and chickens and whatever, that when that embryo gets to a certain size, it starts consuming too many of its resources and has to be expunged. It has to move out. And I remember hearing that idea in high school a long, long time ago. And I've looked and scoured the internet and I cannot find anything about it. But, I'm sure if I looked at some more scholarly articles or talked to, actual OBGYN doctors, they could probably enlighten me a little bit. But still, the idea stuck with me for a particular reason. And it's because of a verse in Scripture, I think it's in Matthew, where Jesus is talking to his disciples about the end days and saying that, in the end days you'll hear of, earthquakes and kingdoms rising against kingdom and wars and rumors of wars. But he says something really interesting, that he says not to be afraid, for these are the beginning of the birth pains. Beginning of the labor pains. And I always wondered what that meant. And I had an idea that it had something to do with, our labor, but at the of humanity being under labor, but I don't know, I just couldn't quite sort it out. But recently I had my experience where I saw the order and the chaos. I had, I had that psychedelic trip where I saw order manifesting out of the chaos. And ever since then, I'll tell you, just things are just weird. It's like it's all that I can see now is order bubbling up out of chaos and then turning back into chaos. I was watching. I was in a field the other day, and I could just, I could feel the grass growing and the bugs wiggling around and the birds flying and me and the guy I was with, and we were surveying. We were trying to make a map of all this stuff. But all these things are constantly in movement and they're always in flow. And we're trying to, to make some kind of order out of this complete chaos that's all around us. And we're all in, both in competition and in harmony with the things around us, and it's happening on an infinite scale, the order that's bubbling up out of the chaos. And it really got me thinking about this because within the human experience, I'll stick with the human birth experience for this, is that, it starts out from apparently nothing, where there was nothing that existed before. And then you have this moment of orgasm and, ejaculation and the sperm and the egg, and they fertilize and then it starts to grow. And it's sort of like this orderly process that turns into this chaotic moment that develops this orderly process. And then it grows to a point where the thing that holds it can't sustain it anymore, and it has to be birthed out into the new place, into the new realm. And it just seems fairly obvious to me that this is what's happening with humanity right now, Now, oh man, it's going to be so hard because there's so many different tangents that I want to go down with this. I feel like I could get on the Joe Rogan podcast and do 10 3-hour series on, just this one thought process to break it all down. So I'm going to try and give you some rabbit holes to chase down. I'm going to leave some sort of benchmarks for myself so that I can go down and chase down these rabbit holes later. But I want this to be kind of the Cliff Notes idea of what it is that I'm talking about. So if I say something that sounds totally ludicrous, there's probably some method behind it. There's probably some deeper thoughts behind it. So let me just say the ludicrous thing is that I think that okay, here's what I think. I think that, oh man, where do I start with this? It's so complicated. All right, I'm just going to spout off some stuff and then see if I can place it together, okay? I think that a good argument can be made for the idea that we are the only life in the universe. Like the life that happens on Earth is the only life that is in the universe. And the reason I say that is because the statistical models, the statistical probability of life evolving on a planet are so fantastically low that the odds of us being here are so low that I think that we're the only ones that are here. Now, I'm not saying that, the universe was created so that we could be here, but it's a different perspective rather, that there's an idea in mathematics that if you're doing a complicated math problem, you cannot find the answer until you finish the entire problem, right? So let's say I come up with a problem and I say x minus 2 over y plus b divided by x to the 7th plus m equals the square root of 35w times, I don't know, 17, right? Just whatever. And I want you to solve for w. Like, let's find out what w is in that whole thing, you know? And there are some people out there who could, like, go ahead and solve that, right? But what you have to, if you're not a mathematician, then what you have to know is that in order to solve that and to solve for w, you have to solve the whole entire thing. Like, you have to figure out what x is and what y is, and you have to figure out all these other sorts of things along with it. Because if you get all the way to the end and, you know, you find a solution for w, then there may have been an error somewhere in the middle and your solution for w isn't correct. Because if you find the solution for w, then you should be able to plug it into the rest of the formula and get all the other, you know, values within there, and they should all come out equally at the end, right? And that's just, you know, that's how math works. But the important thing is that you have to run the whole equation if you want to solve for w, or x or y or z or whatever factor it is in there. You have to run the whole equation. And what that brings to my mind is that, especially since I've had this experience of seeing the chaos, you know, and experiencing the chaos out of which we all manifest, and realizing that it's complete and infinite chaos. It's infinite chaos with different moving parts all the time that are bubbling up and fizzing back out and bubbling up and fizzing back out. And I think that the question of existence is so complex that the universe has to be able to run infinite, you know, seemingly infinite algorithms to be able to, you know, come to the conclusions that it comes to. And what we're doing effectively is we are helping to run those algorithms, you know. You might say, this is a little trippy, but you might say that each individual point of consciousness or awareness is an individual node within a infinite quantum computer that is trying to solve a basic equation. You know, you can say that, you know, somebody somewhere plugged just something ridiculous, like, you know, what's the square root of 4 into some quantum computer somewhere, and the quantum computer has to go and run all of the infinite, you know, variables, you know, within that to come up with the number 2. And what we are is part of those infinite variables that's trying to work out, like, all the different emotional states and all the up and downs of the universe and all the different kind of craziness. I swear I'm not even high right now. but it's like, that's sort of what's happening. Tonight I'm drinking a New Belgium Fat Tire, Belgian White, made with orange peel. They're the Fat Tire. You've probably heard of them. They're employee owned, which is fantastic and independent. And they're out of Colorado. Colorado USA. So, and they're part of the 1% for the planet. That's awesome. So 1% of your, if you partake of Fat Tire products, then 1% of the proceeds of whatever it is that you buy goes back to various green initiatives. So kudos on them. Anyway, all right, back off the deep end again. So I talked a little bit about bubbling up. I talked about birth. I talked about these other sorts of things, these equations that are coming out. Now, and I touched on what Jesus said about the end times and not to be worried because, these were the beginning of the birth pains. So, okay. So take all of that and put it in a basket over there. And we'll come back to all that in a minute. Now, I haven't brought this up for a while, but this is really important. I'm going to go back to the Kabbalion for a minute. And the Hermetic teaching that which is above is like that which is below, and that which is below is like that which is above. They're not the same. They're not mirrors. They're not carbon copies. They're not expanded. They're just like, they're similar. Like the movements of an atom are similar to the movements of a galaxy, And the movements of... Okay, so here's where I'm going with this. I wish I could... I keep forgetting this, but there's a Mayan theory that the human gestation period of 9 months is related to one of the larger year cycles. Like the number of days within this larger year cycle correlates to the number of days within a birth cycle. Like 140,000 years or whatever, or so many months or something like that. I'll have to look that up some more. But and that's mostly a note for me. But I'll go check that out so I can explore that a little bit more. And this is sort of where this idea comes from too, is that in some of their philosophies, humanity was there to be, birthed into something new. And there are some people who believe that humanity has actually been birthed into something new. This will be our 5th time around. And that comes from some obscure Mayan teachings. But I think there's some merit to it. I think there might be something to it. So what brings me to think about this, though, is all of this ideas of, global warming, and we're consuming the planet, and we're consuming all of Mother Earth's resources, and, all these other sorts of things. But what we're doing, and why I brought up the thing about the Kabbalion, is what we're doing to Earth is essentially what an infant does to the mother. It gets to a point where it's outgrown the resources that the mother can commit to it. So then the baby has to be born. And if you are an infant, if you're a child, if you're a young horse or kitten or whatever, then all you've ever known was being attached to the mother and being inside the mother, But then a day comes and you don't know what's going on with the mother's body, but you have to be expunged. You have to be taken out. And I think that is what's happening with humanity right now. And this goes back to also like one of my earlier podcasts where I talked about duality and non-duality, is that you have people on the left and the right and on the political spectrums who are saying, well, global warming is a hoax. It's just this, a cycle that the Earth goes through naturally. And then you have other people that are saying it's human caused. And then you have other people who are on the fence and don't care, and they're just going to keep driving their Escalades anyway. And, but then you've got the problem of, we've built up this industry and we have this connectivity, and we can't go away from that now because, we've evolved and developed our technology to be able to do this kind of stuff. But we're still going to hurt the planet, and there's no good solution to this. And, on and on and on and on and on. And I seriously think that both schools of thought are absolutely right. And that we're getting ready to be birthed into something else. And it's the same thing as in childbirth, where, the infant gets to a certain size where the mother's body can't hold it anymore. Can't keep up with the resources that are being demanded by the infant. And it's not the infant's fault. It's just, the infant is growing, but because the infant is growing, the mother's body can't keep up with it anymore. So the mother's body has to do things to be able to get the infant out. Now, this is the hard part, is that if you're the infant, your first day of coming out onto this earth, that's a rough day, because before you've been like sleeping and warm and it was nice and you could hear your mom's heartbeat and it was good and you had everything you needed. You didn't have to really do anything because like all the food just came in through your belly and you just like sucked your little thumb and maybe you got a little uncomfortable and squirmed a little bit, but everything was pretty much just like cool. And then one day, mom goes into labor and she's gonna squeeze your ass out of this little tiny hole. Oh my God. And then you come out, it's bright and you're cold and you're hungry and everything's weird. I mean, it's gotta be a hugely traumatizing experience, Thank God most of us don't remember it. And if I was to tell an infant, hey, this day is coming. You're gonna come out of there. It's not gonna be fun. You're not gonna like it. But when you get on the other side, it's gonna be beautiful. It's gonna be great. We're gonna get together and I'm gonna show you what ice cream is, and we're gonna play with crickets one day, and you're gonna see the stars. Like the things that the infant couldn't possibly fathom. And I just have to wonder if that isn't, where we are as humanity. So that begs the question of if birth for the infant is uncomfortable, what would birth for humanity look like? So when a woman has a child, or a horse, a dog, a cat, or whatever, a few months later, a few years later, except for maybe some scars, or maybe things don't quite work quite the way they used to, there's very little evidence that she ever had a child. And what if, just like now we're starting to understand that there were more advanced ancient civilizations. There's more and more people who are coming out to believe that, the pyramids are tens of thousands of years old. That the Sphinx has been there for 20,000 years at least. Far, far longer than anybody imagined. And there's geological evidence to back this up. What if those previous civilizations who developed those ideas, who developed those thoughts and religions and teachings and built those monuments and the sculptures and understood the stars, were trying to leave us a sign, not so much that we were Not so much so that we could stay on track or accomplish a certain thing, but to let us know that this is what happens. This is what we are. Just like when a woman has a child, everybody knows that the baby's going to come out. They have baby showers and gifts, and they go and buy balloons, and when we have whole industries built around this. Is it possible that that's actually what they were trying to tell us? That there's a way that we can look at the stars, and we can look at the motions of the planets, and we can look at the things that are happening on the earth all the time. Just like a doctor can, listen to a mother's heartbeat and check her temperature and check her blood chemistry and know with relative certainty, when the baby's going to come. And maybe those are the things that we're supposed to be looking at. Isn't trying to prevent these things or carry out these things or worry and panic about these things, but to just know, like Jesus said in the Bible, that this is just an inevitable thing. This is just how it goes. And if that's true, then what does that mean? Because if you read the rest of the things that Jesus teaches, it gets pretty serious. I was listening to this guy today. He's a Catholic priest, and he does some pretty deep teachings. And that's one thing I like about the Catholics more than the Protestants, is they don't shy away from the really hard teachings in the Bible. Some of the doctrines and some of the ideas they come up with, I don't agree with, but they don't shy away from them the way the Protestants do. The Protestants are like, well, that whole eat my blood or eat my flesh and drink my blood thing. We're not going to talk about that. And that was metaphoric. Everything else in the Bible is literal, but that was metaphoric. It's like, come on, what? Why can't that be literal? Why? Let's have a rational discussion about it. And it's so hard to get anybody to do that on the Protestant camp because they don't want to deal with that kind of stuff, There's lots of other questions like that too. But there's a lot of things in there that Jesus talked about that are serious, And one of the things that I heard that made me walk away from the faith ultimately was Jesus' teaching that, on the last day, on the judgment day, there will be many who come and say, Lord, Lord, didn't we, we healed the sick and we cast out demons. We did, all these things in your name. And Jesus will say, well, get away from me. I never knew you. But he says to them, when you saw your brother or sister was hungry and you didn't feed them, in jail and you didn't visit them, in poverty and you didn't help them, sick and you didn't heal them. And because whatever you do for the least of these, you also do for me. And then on the flip side, there are people who, would see the judge and realize, man, they didn't do anything. They didn't commit their lives to Jesus. They didn't commit, any of that kind of stuff. But they lived a life where they helped the sick and they helped the needy and they ministered to the poor and they reached out to their neighbor, And Jesus says to them, you're welcome into the kingdom because when I was sick, you healed me. When I was in jail, you visited me. And the idea is that you can have the best words. You can be like Donald Trump and have the best words. You can go to church every Sunday. You can check off all the boxes of legalistic religion. But at the end of the day, if you don't do the hard work of, looking after the poor and helping the needy and healing the sick and visiting those who are in jail and doing every little thing that you can to even the least of your fellow humanity, then you're also not doing those things for the Christ. And that's what becomes really important, And that's where I get frustrated with the church, because so much of it seems like Walmart churches these days, It's all about going through the motions. And I got so frustrated with it. Once I'm ready to start doing the Atheist Teaches the Bible series, I'll get a lot more into that kind of thing. But so, even though I don't believe in God and Christianity the same way that I used to, or that most Christians do, I still hold on to that teaching that, whatever you do for the least of these, you also do for me. That there is going to be that final day when you have to give account for the way that you live your life. And that's the standard that you'll be held to. What did you do to help the poor? How did you fight in your life, to help the elderly? What did you do to help the widow? How did you stand up for them? Because those are the important things, And you can get into debates about, well, we need better social welfare programs, or, we need to let the free market decide, or we need to, a universal basic income, or, I don't know, pick something. I have my opinions. This isn't the place for that right now. But we need to be doing a better job. Because what if I'm right? What if? I'm not saying I am. I'm just saying this is my perspective. That humanity is, if the Kabbalian's right, and if Jesus is right, and if, I have this information about biology, and if the Mayans were right, and all this other kind of stuff, it makes sense. It's really the only thing that makes sense. And why wouldn't it be true? Why would it not be true that we have, evolved in this way? Maybe evolution is something so much larger than us that we can't possibly comprehend it right now. Maybe we are just like this little tiny thing that's bubbling up into, we're a little tiny piece of, what do they used to call it? I forget what it was, but not the gonad, that's not the right word, but the mote, we're a speck of dust, but we're bubbling up, we're like the effervescence within, some ginger ale that's like bubbling up to the top. And just like, the things that are below us, bubble up out of chaos, and you have like bees and wasps and ants and amoebas and, all these little things that are, see these things that bubble up, and they're trying to make little bits of order out of them. What if we're just another part of that whole process? And there's higher orders beyond us that we can't comprehend yet because we haven't gotten there. And that's part of the process of becoming a human, is going from a place of incredibly high entropy to a place of lower entropy. And it's just always that constant movement. And we're like a bubble, that's coming up from the deepest parts of the ocean and bubbling up to the surface. And then, joining something else, and then becoming something else again after that. But at the same time, we as a collective can be like a unified bubble of consciousness that's moving up, through the dimensions, and then we all collectively, bubble out into something else. We come out as an individual, as, something higher than what we are. And yet we're all contributing to it. Like each one of your brain cells is contributing to what's happening in your brain. And each one of your, toenail cells is contributing to what's happening in your toenail. But it's all still just coming out of the chaos into the order. And I think that this is just where we are right now, is that we're just moving into that phase. And the best thing we can do is to be prepared for it. And the best way to be prepared for it is to act in love. Because what if I'm wrong? Right? What if I'm wrong? Then, so you act in love, and I'm wrong, and the world gets better. So, okay, great. But what if I'm right? And you act in love, and you get to the other side, and it turns out that acting in love was the answer. That's the equation that the universal computer is trying to work out. Is, how does love overcome fear? Maybe that's the question. It's something worth thinking about. But at the end of the day, what it calls for is loving your neighbor as yourself. Respecting life. It comes down to striving to live in harmony with the earth. But not in like a flowery, tree-hugging idiot kind of way, but in an intelligent kind of way. I'm not talking about, dipshits with flowers in their hair. If you want to do that, then cool, great, I don't care. But what I'm talking about is, being smart about it, being intentional about it. And saying, hey, if you look out at a farmer's field, right? Okay, so use the analogy of the garden. And I think that this is one of the things with that Jordan Peterson, when he was talking about the creation story, he came close to this, but he didn't quite go over the edge. This is one of the edges I wish he would have dove over. Is there's this idea within of what a garden is, and it's us making order out of the chaos around us. You provide a garden wall. You have like a lawn, and you have a place for these plants and a place for those plants, and things are orderly and they're neat and they're clean, and you can carve your space out within there, right? But that's how we need to approach this. We need to approach it with that analogy that is, in fact, that works even better now that I think about this, is that, humanity was created to be within that garden of, order. But because of how we think and our desire to know more about this kind of stuff, we were cast out of that garden. And so part of our role is to always be trying to restore the garden, trying to bring things back into order all the time. It's like the little Dutch boy with the dam, and they're always, putting their fingers in the holes where things are starting to fall apart. And that's kind of what we do and what we need to be busy at all the time. But you can't do that through, like the other podcast I did about power versus force. You can't always do that through force. Sometimes it's necessary, but the force has to come from a place of love. And you're more effective if you do it through power. But the power has to be through a sense of, what's the word? Reinvigorating. Has to be through nurturing. It has to be through caring. It has to be finding that center road, between the order and the chaos. And allowing and enjoying the chaos that bubbles up, but then taking that and making it into something orderly that's useful, not only for yourself as an individual and for humanity, but that's useful for everybody. Like finding that balance in the ecosystem, so that honeybees can thrive, and so that dolphins can thrive, and so that whales can thrive, and so that humanity can also thrive. And maybe that's part of it too. I don't know. Kind of brainstorming on this one. But that's what I wanted to do with this podcast, is to just get you thinking. Just kind of give you a different perspective. I'm not saying I'm right. I'm I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying these are some of the dots that I've connected. And it wouldn't surprise me if this was true. You know, that this is what's really going on in the world. You know, that we're a fetus that's about ready to be born into something else. And that's what all those Bible teachings are about. And that's what the year, maybe December 21st, 2012 was our initial due date. And we're just like overdue. And Mother Earth's going to go into labor pretty soon. We're going to be born. And then, but what that labor looks like, I don't know. Could it be, meteor storms? Could it be, I don't know. Could it be catastrophes? Could it be nuclear wars? Could it be, who knows? It could be horrifying. Because the reality is that, in order for us to leave, this plane and move on to the next one, we have to die. And that's scary thought. It'd be nice to just kind of keep on going and keep on going and keep on going the way that we are. But maybe that's not our destiny. I don't know. I really don't know. But I don't think that it's anything that... Oh my God, that can get me in so much trouble. I just realized what I just said. Yeah, that can give me a lot of trouble. Because, there's a lot of people who would take that and say, like, oh, I'm going to help Mother Earth go into labor or whatever it is. You don't have to, A volcano will erupt or, meteor will hit us or, there'll be some kind of solar flare event that'll just melt everything. In fact, I heard a good presentation from somebody that said that they were predicting that the thing that would take us out would be one big solar event, and that it would, it would wipe out North America. I wish I could remember this guy's name, but it would basically wipe out all of North America. And what they were predicting is that it would be timed. It would be in late October, early November, or possibly in June, but probably towards the end of the year, when we are traveling through is it the Kuiper Belt? I forget what it's called, but we're basically there's a region of space that we pass through twice a year that has a lot of asteroids and space debris, and we pass through there twice a year, once in June, once in October, and that's why there's always lots of meteor showers and all this kind of stuff that time of year, because we are on a ball of molten lava with a frozen crust hurtling through the universe at hundreds of thousands of miles per hour. And every once in a while we go through a sandstorm and, stuff gets crazy. But that it's, it could be that, like a solar storm could hit us. There could be what do they call it? A coronal ejection. Right as we're going through one of these meteor things, and one side of the earth would get blasted, and then the rest of the earth would get hit by meteors and just completely just wipe out everything, kill 9/10 of humanity. That sounds like a bad day. And that's a reality, and we're not planning for it. We're not thinking about it, We're worried about Joe Biden's son getting some stupid job in the Ukraine for $50,000 a month. Okay, great. Did you know there's giant space rocks out there that can completely destroy all of us all at once? And you're worried about Joe Biden's kid, or whether or not Donald Trump takes too much Sudafed. Come on. Let's get it together. And, whether it's man-made or whether it's natural or whatever it is, or even if it doesn't happen, the thing that we have to do is learn to live through love, to learn to live through our neighbor, to learn to, embody that Christ consciousness. and show it to our fellow humanity, because it's through that Christ consciousness that we can move humanity forward. Whether that is here on Earth, if my whole theory is completely wrong and we have to remain here on Earth and moving into the future, then we need to be doing that through this Christ consciousness. We need to be striving to be the Buddha, to be bodhisattvas, or to move towards that, to move towards the white culture that I was talking about, not in an ethnic kind of way because that's hideous, but in a sense of purity where we're striving towards that, or if nothing else, where we're striving towards a better balance between the yin and the yang. Anyway, my beer's done. And I think those are all the words that I have. So, I love you. Yeah, that was a crazy one. I'll talk to you soon. Bye. That might actually be the furthest off the deep end that I've ever gone. I think maybe changing this show to, Sean Overthinks Everything wasn't a good idea. And I should just keep it, off the deep end. Yeah, that was pretty far off the deep end. There's a lot of different things to unpack there. I know it sounds like, hocus pocus and religiosity and lots of weird, just sounds weird. But there's something to it. When I first started doing these podcasts and I talked about how I would have one of these crazy ideas of what would happen in the future, like, have this idea that we'd be able to, store a document in our wristwatch and send it, wirelessly to a printer and have it print. And everybody told me I was nuts. And now I can totally do that. Or, I said that we'd be able to just, go on our TV and, pick a movie and watch it anytime and not have to rent anything. And everybody told me I was nuts. And I got the same feeling about this, So we'll see, we shall see. But like I said all the way through, the real answer is to, live through love, and you can't go wrong if you do that. Anyway, if you'd like to get in touch with me, if you'd like to know more, blah, 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 check me out on my website, SeanMurdochTalks.com. That's SeanMurdochTalks.com. And I'll talk to you soon. Love you much. Bye. Hey folks, before I go, I wanted to bring back something that I started doing and I don't remember why I stopped, but they've got this. If you haven't checked these guys out, you gotta go to the YouTube free audio library. It's just, YouTube. Go to Google and type in YouTube audio library. And there's all kinds of cool stuff on there. So I'm going to start playing you out with some songs that I find on there that are interesting. This one is called 69 Bronco, and it is by DJ Williams. And if you click on their link in the YouTube, DJ Williams, they got some pretty cool stuff in there. They got a growing YouTube presence. But this song is just wonderful. I absolutely love it. I think you will too. Check them out. I'll put a link in the description so you can get more of their fantastic music, and it'll make your life a little bit better. So anyway, love you much. Enjoy it. Talk to you soon. Bye.